Remember that we are on social media. We are on YouTube and IG. We are also on Facebook, and the handle is GBS TV Africa. Today in studio, we have a special guest, and it is a great privilege for us to be having him with us. We're going to be talking about gender-based violence, GBV, also known as intimate partner violence. And today we're going to be talking about that, but we're also going to be looking at it and focusing a little bit more on children, how it affects children and how it happens as well on children. It is a rising, you know, uh, there are so many rising cases of GBV, and it's quite a concern. And, even with a lockdown, it has become worse. So that's why we're giving it a bit of attention so that we can be able to, let you know what to do if you see it happening or if it's happening to you, or even if you're the perpetrator, because everybody who is caught up in that vicious cycle is affected. So before I get too much into it, I want to give our guest an opportunity to introduce himself. Karibu sana.
Hello, viewers. My name is George Ndawa. I work with Alternative Childcare Alliance as the Executive Director. I'm really glad to be with you today. I hope we are going to work together on that.
Yes, we are. So tell us a little bit about yourself, George. What is it that made you change? Because off studio, we talked a little bit about your educational background and you studied business. And then thereafter, you studied social work and you're now running your organization, which is focused primarily on children. Tell us a little bit about what prompted you to, to take it to that level where you are really, really giving children a lot of attention and a lot of love, a lot of care. What is the inspiration behind it?
I think it's because of the environment. There have been a lot of challenges during my child growth time. I grew up in Eastland, Bahati, Makadara, then California. And then back in the village, there is also quite a big number of disadvantaged children that I interacted with. So a lot of stuff resonating with my life and their lives. And I feel like children do deserve a good life, regardless of economic status, but there is some level of rights that they should be accorded by people who are responsible in their lives or people in their surroundings. So that motivated me a lot.
Wow, I'm so happy to hear that you grew up in Eastlands. I also grew up in Eastlands. Before we moved to Eastlands, we used to live in Banana, and then we moved to Buruburu Extension. Then we moved to Harambe, and I remember, my childhood as a happy one. There was a lot more freedom, a lot more play, and I generally think that we had a better childhood compared to the children of nowadays who are super glued to their gadgets. I remember, just living in estates and going out to play games and, so nevertheless, I'm sure that there were situations that you saw and I saw that were displeasing. I don't know, is it possible for you to talk a little bit about that? What you could remember growing up that, was wrong. Now that you're an adult, you can look back in hindsight and say, that was completely off.
Well, when I was very young, there are instances where my playmates, my peers, we could play out, and one of them, the father comes back, and is so drunk and doesn't want to hear anything. He's the everything, and gets home, and the people that the person that gets the cruelest moment is the mother. Why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? And if you see the faces of the children at that time, well, I could place myself in the shoes of my peers or my playmates, and I couldn't understand. Sometimes as children, you can laugh at your friend's father who has come back home almost crawling, because of drunkenness, and gets into the house and there is that high violence that children are scared, they run away. So you look at all that and you feel pity to the children more than even the adults.
Yeah, I can relate to that a lot. And you'd see children even like trying to ape those parents coming home, and they'd be just staggering by the way and falling into ditches. And of course, they would do it as a joke. Children tend to act out a lot of the environment that they see at home. And, as much as they are acting it out and trying to play it during Chamama and Chababa. I don't know if you remember that game, which was so common during our times.
Did that a lot.
Then you could be able to see that these things are affecting our children, and I can only imagine how the ones who used to be affected directly, how terrible it was for them, because here you are acting, you're the father or you're the mother drunk, but you know what? It is my mother you're aping. It is my father you're aping. I can only imagine that, that was a very traumatic experience for children. And I like that you brought up the issue of alcohol and drug abuse, because in a lot of gender-based violence cases, those tend to be the perpetrators, people who are not able to control their alcohol, drunkards, alcoholics, people on hard drugs. They tend to create violence in homes. But I wanted us to also talk a little bit about people who sometimes think they are normal, people who have anger issues. You may not be drunk, you may not be taking hard drugs, but what if you've got such a high temper and you're so controlling as a father or as a mother? What do you think? Do you consider that to be abuse, or does society tend to just think of abuse where there's chemical dependence?
Actually, abuse comes in so many ways, and drunkenness or alcoholism is just part of it, because in most cases, people try to hide under the influence of alcohol, but deep in them, they know what they are doing. They could do it even before that, but they're looking for an excuse to say, "Oh, it wasn't me. It's only because I was in this situation," But otherwise, there are people also who just unleash violence when they're sober. Some of them don't even take alcohol. They have never even tried a cigarette, leave alone bang and all that. But that is just somehow they have the courage to face other people and just unleash their violence on them. So there are several points that people use to do what they want to do.
Yeah, that's very correct. A lot of anger issues. And do you feel like our society is addressing the issue of anger? Because there's a lot of pent-up anger in society because of just everything. The situation, the economic situation. Right now there's COVID, you may have lost a job, you may be forced to take a pay cut, you may be forced to work from home. Do you feel that our society acknowledges the pent-up anger in the citizens?
Well, I think the society has disappointed our future. Even our children will not get the things that we saw when we were young, because somehow during those very early days when urbanization had not captured our lifestyles, what used to happen is that there are some elders in the village, there are elders in a society that would be making corrections. If something goes wrong, even, do you know that those days when I was in the village, I could see a man could rise against a wife and the village will not allow that wife to be kicked out of that home. They will bring her back and force the man to accept that this is not just any other woman. We respect her, and you have to respect her. And they could obey that, and life goes better again. But you see, right now there is too much rights in around us. There is a lot of human rights, and most of this is westernized, and it's not our culture. That is why I think we must be struggling, because it's not part of us. There is something part of us which we have lost. There is no checks and balances in our communities, and so when we come, it is a man eat man society. If I do it right or wrong, what does it have to do with you? What you know, and that is, to me, that is where we are missing it out. We don't have a point of harmonization. If someone is wrong or right, do you know that in this order of violence, there is another part that also happens, where a woman may be very right and confronting rights so that she can maintain order in that house. And because of her gender weakness, the man will overrule her and carry the day. Did you know that? And sometimes the woman could get hurt in such a situation, and so much could happen to her that in the end of it, everyone is thinking that she was wrong, and yet she was right, you know. So
Yeah.
our society has just gone berserk, you know.
I agree with you. Our society has gone berserk. And the other day we had a blackout at home, and because of a blackout, I got a chance to be able to talk to my children, and I was telling them, in the when I was younger, like when we go up country, there was no power. So during the night, we would actually all sit around the table and tell stories. And this would be an opportunity for correction, opportunity for encouragement, for motivation, mentorship, touching base, And as a society, we've lost that, because now parenting has been left ideally to be also a one-man show or a one-man and woman show, because we do have single-parent families. The village aspect, we've lost the village aspect, and that is really sad. And I think it has affected our children. And I wish that we could look for ways to bring back those African traditions. I don't know whether, as organizations that work with children, do you feel that there's something as Africans, as Kenyans, we can do to bring back that harmonization, that togetherness,
What I like about our government is that there is a lot of positivity on culture development. The only lacking element is where, because people, we don't wait for the government to come and implement it at our doorsteps. What we should do is we need to have a few people spearheading some direction and involving the government, telling the government, look, this is what we are doing. How can you give us a space for this? We have lack of such kind of resources, because I know in most cases people think resources is only about money, but some of them are not really about money. You just initiate something that you can do without spending a dime, and you involve the local government. Every ministry is all the way to the local regions. So we involve them and we engage them, so that when they are doing even budget reallocations, at some point they will see a need of making a correction. If it is building some hall where people can get education, but there is a need to that. But if there is no need, they will not think about that. That is what I've learned with when you are networking or working with the government, even as a non-profit. There is always a room, but people are not there to spearhead.
This is Talk to Rosemary Njage Show. I am your host, Rosemary Njage. This is a place where we host different choirs, different praise and worships, different bands, different worshipers. We are so much blessed.
There is a God in heaven.
Amen.
He's a God in heaven who answers all of our prayers. You come, mbinguni.
Your talents and your gifting shall open doors.
But I'm going to do this, dedicating it to Christ. And that's how I wrote Nachotaka.
Haja ya moyo wangu, Yesu. Haja ya moyo wangu.
How do you go about composition of your music?
Everything that I sing inakuwaga ni my life.
Neema yako Yesu, Baba yanitosha. Nikiwa nawe, mimi niko huru.
Yale umetenda Baba, yote ni makuu.
Echo Music right here on your #1 TV station, GBS TV. My good name is Hypola the Experience. You can call me Moja Safi. Kumazel the best TV ever. Lafu shoni gani Echo Music SMS line 21144.
Tunakuchezea zile ngoma mpya zenye zimekuwa zikitokea hii wiki.
Anytime ulizia, bila God nikulia. Na wakinikeuzia, I know you got me, God. Yeah, you got me, God.
Ati wanauliza gospel imedu. Bisa CMT we have to do. So Bible now we hand, so we physically, spiritually, lyrically, mentally.
Leo manze tuko na wasanii wa daily ndani ya nyumba.
Yeah.
Tuko na muziki kali, tuko na countdown kali. Yaani kila kitu leo iko fresh. Chukua sharubati, hiyo ni juice hapo. Weka juu ya meza.
Triple.
Yeah.
Tumia mtu salamu pale mali unakulanga chapo dogo.
Nani mimi? Walifunga.
Ni vipaji Portilons. So ukiniona niko on run pale Tao BS nikiharakisha kukuja GBS, it's because Portilons is back. At this time it's back to inform you, to transform you, to educate you and inspire you.
Najiamini, ndo maana sometimes me who laugh at my failures ndo ni motivate success. Ni Dante Spy the Poet hapa hivi. Tuko Vipaji Poetry Lounge live at GBS.
Best Chef na Spice ya Kari no wanda alikuwa mkali. Vipaji Poetry Lounge
at all social media platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, tuko everywhere. Vipaji Poetry Lounge, GBS. Stay tuned.
The woman is burdened so much, such that they don't have time for themselves.
If you don't go after what you want, there's going to be hurt, there's going to be disappointment, there's going to be regret, there's going to be let down.
I love people. People will always have a view. They will always have an opinion. Whether you like it or not. It's always there. People will put you in a shame box.
You have to love yourself first.
I'm not that person.
It should come from deep conviction, and I'm talking about conviction. I'm not talking about emotional giving.
Then that should pose a big problem.
A man won't handle that. They will just run.
Families break. Marriages don't exist anymore.
There's so many people out there pretending like they don't have the problem. Pretending like their relationship is not on the rock.
What was that?
That's nonsense.
Get lost.
No. I think
Everywhere, GBS.
All right. Thank you so much, George. I'm so happy that you work. I like the name of your organization, Alternative Childcare. I'd like you to please tell us a little bit about that title, because I want my viewer to understand when you mean alternative, what exactly are you saying? Are you moving, where are you moving from where to where?
Yeah, thank you for that. Actually, alternative childcare simply means, actually, it has several entry points. It means children within family, but then there are several entry points. Number one would be in a situation where a child is displaced or abandoned, the child needs to be traced back to the biological parents. That is number one. Then number two, if the biological parents cannot be traced, and there could be some kin persons, some relatives somewhere, some auntie, some brother, I mean, not really brother, but well, could be even a brother, or an uncle, or a grandparent, then that would be the second option, so that children do not lose their identities. They need, number one, the nuclear family. After that, the extended family. If none is there at all, then we can consider, depending on the age of the child, we consider guardianship. If the child is big enough to do some other things by him and or herself, then we also have kinship adoption. Kinship adoption is where a relative adopts one of their own. And then if there is totally no family background and no hint of any trace of where the child was from, then the child can be declared free for adoption. And those are the children that can be adopted. That's even by the law. They are allowed to be now declared free by the courts, and then they can be adopted by any person who is willing to adopt such a child.
Oh yeah, all right. I'm so happy to hear that because, basically what I'm hearing you say is that when a child is lost or a child is separated from their families, the number one, solution is to try and reconnect them back to their families, whether it is nuclear first or extended. And I'm very happy to hear that because, a lot of times we hear that there are a lot of children's homes, there are a lot of orphanages, and what I'm hearing is that we're trying to reconnect these children. Is that also usually the case with orphanages and children's homes? Or in children's homes, do they want to basically just bring up the children, many of them together without the ties, the family ties?
The aim of a children's home, the basic part of it would be a rescue center, and the child should be reconnected to the family. That actually is the moral story behind children's homes. So, but in every society, there are also those people who would take advantage of situations. And when HIV struck this country the worst from the early 80s, then there was that norm. It became a norm that every other person who feels I'm doing good to the society, if he becomes a celebrity, in the next minute you will be hearing that he's now opening a children's home. There is no research behind that. There is no connection completely, but people just want to open children's homes. Also, some people, due to economic constraints, they come to a point where they feel like, looking at that other organization in the neighborhood, they feel like because of donors coming in that place, they see the white guys showing up time and again. So they get a feeling that this is a very easy way of getting money. And such children's homes, you will realize that they don't even want people to know the secrets, the things that are happening in such places. People are not accessible to get in there easily. And so whatever things that are going in there will be their top secrets, So, but there are those genuine children homes. I've interacted with them. There are very many that they have children come in and they work on how they can get out. And they get out to the right hands, not just getting out anywhere. Because because the system is those who get out, they get out through the system, through the courts, and get to their families. Some of them get even their biological parents or even relatives traced, and such go back to their kinspeople.
Yeah, I like that you've been very honest, and I really appreciate that, because the concept of rescuing children in situations where they are at harm, whether it is spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, is a good thing. But you're right that there have been a lot of people who have tended to see children's homes and orphanages as lucrative businesses. We're not thinking our children are safe in children's homes, but even in those children's homes, they are being abused. Even when this whole thing of taking photos of children in such dire need, even when you're giving, like, let's say, for example, you're giving sanitary wear and panties to girls, and then you're there busy just making them lift them, cover their face with them. I mean, when you think about it, it is undignified to do that, because you yourself, you don't do that. It's something these are private garments which you don't go exposing. So, and sometimes you just want to take these photos so that you can take the pictures and send them out to your donors, whether they are local or international. And in a way, that's also a type of abuse. Like you're abusing the children, and you're taking advantage of them. So I'm very happy to hear that you are aware of that. And I'm not saying that all children's homes are like that. And I'm not saying that there is no space for them. I like that you've really clarified that they are a rescue. So it's like they rescue them, and then they try and put them back into the families. If the families are safe, if they're not safe, then do kinship adoption. If there is no next of kin available, then we do the normal adoption. If they're declared free from adoption. I really like that, because, sometimes you find that, children, even in their families, they're going through abuse, So I'm happy to hear that you're there to protect them. I have a question for you now. Do you discriminate, or are you open to families, whether they're in single parent families or the usual father-mother type of families?
For adoption or something?
For adoption, or even for reconnection?
No, actually there is no discrimination. The law is very clear on such, and there are outlined ways of how to do it. Like, for example, if you are a married couple, then you can adopt any gender. If you are a man and you want to adopt, you can only adopt a boy. If you are a woman,
do men come to adopt the way that women do? I'm very curious.
Well, that's a very good question. It's not common. It's not common, but so that the law doesn't discriminate. The law provides that if you're a single person and you want to adopt, you go for your gender. So you don't, like a man. I don't go, if I'm single, I don't go to adopt a girl, because such are make children so vulnerable to abuse. And that is something very clear. But if you are married, you can adopt any. You can even adopt 2 children. That's also there. But if I go back also to the question we tackled, some children's homes that are not genuine are just as they are not genuine according to the law and even their registrations and all that, you realize that there is also an amount of child abuse in there. If you can go back, you remember there is a time that our president said that even foreign adoptions has to be stopped. I think it was back in 2014, and
yes,
he cited a case of a children's home with some child abuse. And it's not only in that place, it's in several other places, but also we know that happens in every society, isn't it? And there has to be some bad guy out there. Not everybody is good, but then our laws are also clear on punishing any law breaking by any individual, whether it's a foreigner or a local guy. So those are the things that we need to be stressing so much, that when somebody does wrong, it should not now bring a blanket for judgment upon every player in the field. So that's also there. But actually, for us as our organization, we advocate for strict adherence to the law and doing everything to the best interest of the child, so that if can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so that if anything happens, there is a way of how to trace the genesis up to the end of everything. And so our advocacy, as we do our advocacy and sensitization, we target to make people understand everything surrounding children, whether in orphanages or in families, because even in family settings, children get abused. Some of them by their own fathers, some of them by their own very close uncles and even aunties, So we are not talking of isolating any group to say that this is the bad element, this is the bad seed, So this is all encompassed.
And you know what? I know that you're not in the legal field, but I know that you might be familiar with a few cases and with a few judgments. And it's very sad because, nowadays in the newspapers, we're reading about fathers who are raping their children. And of course, their children are underage. Recently there was a photo doing the rounds of a girl in a dress that was, bloody, and it was a difficult picture to see. Because this is a small child. Me, that one, it was just too much for me, and I couldn't even look at it or even forward. And I just wonder, do you think as a country, we've just come in, we've got a lady, CJ, Chief Justice, who's been nominated, and that's a huge step for the country. Congratulations. Well, it is not yet done, it's a nomination, but we hope that it goes through. But when it comes to, the judgments and the punishments to the perpetrators of GBV, are we making progress?
Well, as an individual, I don't think, we could be making some progress, but not according to how I would have wanted that. Because as you have mentioned about that girl photo, I saw that photo, and you don't know how some of us would feel. You feel like your own daughter is in that situation, and the pain of that brings tears down your cheek, and sometimes you wonder why you didn't you didn't get into law practice. You could be a magistrate somewhere to get such a person come in front of you. I would give them the maximum. But also talking about the maximum sentence, it needs to be more harsh. It needs to be, it's still, to me, it looks very lenient, because somebody who molests a child or abuses a child and in 2 years comes back to that society, what has changed? Nothing. After all, you have hardened that guy so that he knows there is nothing big that is going to happen more than what he already knows, So for me, I think that there should be a legislation around that. Or sometimes when we talk like this, it gives me an idea of how can we engage with lawmakers so that we make suggestions. They can create some policies that make the sentence become very feared by people who would be doing the same.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we need to do more, and we need to make examples of some people by giving very harsh sentences, so that that person who is considering, or that person who is thinking about it, can be able to be stopped because of their fear of the law. That's what the rule of law is. It's not that you're so but it's that when you think about the consequences of being caught, you're just like, hey, wacha tu nikae hapa with and I look for my own girlfriend or my wife or whatever, or my partner, instead of the child, So another thing that I would want us to talk about is, does it we don't hear cases of boys, yet we know they are there. Is it that they are not reported or they're not like on the media? It seems to be very gender focused on girls. I'm not saying that because it's happening to girls, it must happen to boys. But I'm just asking, is it that it does not happen to boys? Because we rarely hear about it.
This will shock you now. Just before COVID struck, it was around, I think, February last year. I was in a meeting, and in this meeting, there is a lady from the US who came to Africa. She comes to Africa to do research in whichever they want to focus on. But this time round, they were focusing on gender violence, and they said that the difference between girls and boys molested in Africa, not really the whole Africa, but it was in Malawi, in Kenya, in Uganda, and Zimbabwe. Those are the countries that she mentioned. In South Africa also, yes. So the numbers are not different. It's almost the same. But now, because you are a boy and this is not familiar in your ground, how can you report it? Who will want that shame in your family? Do you want to put your parents in such a big shame? Why can't you solve it within that line? Just solve it out there now that it's been exposed. Can we sit down, like we always say, wazee wakae, waongee na yeye alafu alipe? You know, that kind of thing. And once an abuse occurs, there is no amount of money that can pay for that.
In fact, no amount whatsoever.
Even if you bring a number of goats, according to your rituals, the community rituals, the number of goats and cows, and you exceed that with one or two.
You're right. No amount of money can be able to compensate. In fact, the people who are trying to bring solutions in such a way, they also need to be,
punished.
To be arrested and punished, because that is even making it look like it is about money. You go and do something like that, and then all you have to do is pay. There are people here who have money and they can pay for that, which is really sending out the wrong message. And we really need to make sure that we get to hear of such cases with a view of punishing and with a view of stopping, with a view of educating, so that, that does not happen. And it's sad, therefore, because that means that there are no channels of healing going towards even those individuals. What happens instead is you're victimized, And I want us to discuss a little bit about that, because, it's so unfortunate that the victim becomes victimized. People now start looking at you as, oh, you're the girl that was raped, you're the boy who was raped, you're the people who are molested. And then they start asking you those funny questions of where were you? Who are you with? Did you not share? Those things of crushing the victim and making it look like it's the victim's fault.
Yeah, you know that question of where were you? Why did you go across that place? That offends me not really much, because look at it this way. All of us as citizens of a country like Kenya, we have rights to be protected. We have our rights as human beings. We have our individual rights not to be violated by another person, But you had this story of where a lady was passing across a narrow path, which is rarely frequented by people, and then meets this man who molests or rapes her, and then instead of facing that man for that act, we condemn this lady and we ask her why she just decided to cross that. Why were you looking for that very thing? You know, who looks for such a thing? And somebody is already in that situation. She trusts that all human beings will respect rights of every other human being. And so if there is some lack of sensitivity in some people, and or if some nuts are loose in some people's heads and they can act more worse than animals, because even animals don't behave like that. I've never seen any, I can tell you.
Yeah.
So if a man can do that, people should look for that man and put him to justice.
I think so too. I think so. It is actually in order. And also another thing is that I feel we really didn't address is the issue of verbal abuse, the issue of emotional abuse. You know, it seems like in society, we only step in where there's physical abuse. Does physical abuse always start at physical level, or is there like a progression? Maybe first there's anger, then there's verbal abuse, then there's emotional, then there's physical. And I'm asking this because as an outsider and who wants to step in and prevent something bad from happening, at what point do you come in? Because people usually get there when it's a little too late, you know? And we are seeing cases of a lot of deaths again in the media because of relationships. And these are affecting both genders. You know, somebody has been thrown off a balcony. Recently, we had the two police officers who shot each other.
Yes.
You know, imagine, that was so sad. Eh?
Yeah, most of these are premeditated. In fact, nobody just begins from nowhere to abuse another person. There has to be some trigger which has been premeditated to get to a point of action. And most of it, before it goes physical, it's gone through some verbal, and there are some entry points which, if you investigate, if you follow this closely all the way down, you will realize that this person is not meeting the victim for the very first time, and maybe the interactions are not. That is not the beginning of the interactions. Maybe there is some sign of abuse that he or she had unleashed against the victim at some point. It's only that when it gets to this, people don't want to bring out everything, because they want to be good people. And also the worst part of it is the stigma surrounding the victims after the revelation of what's happened.
Very sad, but I think there's healing in talking. And I don't know why, I feel like as Africans, we have a lot of boundaries around what we can talk about and what we can't talk about. And so some things we feel, I don't know that it's an African thing or what, but we just feel like some things are just sacred. Like now, I can't be busy telling you everything. It's like I'm shaming my other person, or you know.
There are limitations of talks, because people have lost trust in one another. Because if somebody, for example, somebody very close to you abuses you, who can you confide in? You know, because everyone else out there will be more of a monster than even your uncle, because your uncle did this to you when you were young and you have kept it. I've spoken to a lady who, in confidence, told me about what her uncle did to her a long time ago when she was a girl, and that is a brother to her father. Both parents, the mother, the grandmother, and the grandfathers are one, you know. And this man abused this girl not once, several times. She had never told anyone to date. She's an adult, a very elderly girl now, a woman. And so how can we be that society where we can sit down to listen, giving ears to somebody who is in a situation. You know, sometimes people behave weirdly when they are grown, or even children, they behave weirdly. And instead of finding out what's going on in this child, we punish them. We beat them because they don't behave like others. Why are you jumping on this and that? Why can't you be like so and so? Their lifestyles are different. Some of them have gone through crucial lifestyles when their brains cannot contain what they are undergoing. During that brain growth, children need to be children. But if you make them to be adults when they still don't understand, they never forget, and it draws them back the whole of their lifestyles. We need to know that we have challenges during these times. Some of them are economical, but they transform into other ways that they become things that trigger anger, they trigger hatred, they trigger inhumanity in us. And sometimes we behave not the normal way. We as Kenyans, we need to come back to our senses. Actually, we need to get a point where we can talk to the elderly people also. Let's just get that time. We may be out here looking for money, riches, finances, all that, and we are not caring about even our relationships with the closest persons or to the farthest ones, to our friends, which we should consider most. If we can think back, you know, back in the village, people don't really care about riches. What they care about is relationships. So I know riches is good. Money is really good, and it makes you attain any level of good life that you may desire or look for. But if you have no relationships, it is coming to meaninglessness. You know, you become that person who is selfish. Even wild animals live in communities. Why aren't we living in communities ourselves? What has changed? How can we bring a conversation that brings us back to a society? Look at it this way. Children abused are potential abusers. Children abused are potential abusers. Or there is something that has already been triggered in them, that there is a potentiality of them doing something bad, a potentiality of doing something really bad, because they feel like their lives are not appreciated and nobody cares about them. So why would they care about others? You see, these are kind of ways that we need to look at and come back as a society. So as media fraternity, it's also important, and I really appreciate that you have brought such a topic for a discussion. But if you can get some more time, we can get several guys that we can come and just do a discussion. How can we get back to where we came from? Where are our roots? What do we stand for? Do we stand for selfishness? Do we stand for greed? Do we stand for, or do we stand for one another? There is this spirit of Pan-Africanism that I've always enjoyed and I like very much. If one time you get another opportunity, we can bring a conversation on Pan-Africanism. You know, Pan-Africanism is having a motto of I am because you are. I live because you live. You know, I don't rise to a higher level without you lifting me there.
I like that so much, George. That's an excellent parting shot. I'm sorry to jump right in and interrupt you there, but it's because time is up. But yes, I agree. We're going to look for more time and talk about Pan-Africanism. I am because you are. I live because you live. You know, I can lift you up and you can lift me up, and together we can be on the top. I like that. That is a very good approach. So thank you, viewer, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. It's from us at the studio. It's bye for now.